Let me tell you something right away. Your life changes the moment you stop waiting for permission to feel worthy. I've been through it, the doubt, the second guessing, the feeling that somehow I wasn't good enough or that I needed to earn someone's approval to take my place in this world. It's exhausting, isn't it? Trying to measure up to a standard that feels just out of reach. But here's the truth I've learned. The only person who can define your worth is you. There was a time when I thought confidence was about being loud, being seen, or convincing people of my value. I thought I had to prove myself constantly. But the more I tried, the emptier I felt because I was chasing something external. That's when I discovered something life-changing. True confidence doesn't come from what others think of you. It's built from within, brick by brick, through the choices you make every day. This is what I want to talk to you about today. How you carry yourself, the way you speak, the way you handle challenges, all of it starts in your mind. If you let doubt creep in, it shows. But when you build a foundation of self-belief, people notice. You don't have to say, "Look at me, I'm great." They'll just feel it. And no, this isn't about arrogance or pretending to be perfect. It's about knowing deep down that you are enough, as you are, and that you're constantly working to become even better. Life will throw things at you to make you question yourself. People will test your boundaries, underestimate you, or even try to bring you down. I've had my share of those moments, the kind where you feel a lump in your throat and a voice in your head whispers, "Maybe they're right." But you know what I've learned? Their opinions only hold power if you let them. What matters isn't what they think, it's how you respond. This isn't about pretending you don't feel the sting of criticism or setbacks. It's okay to feel it. We're human. But you can't let it define you. When you truly own who you are, when you start acting like someone who knows their value, the game changes. You stop seeking approval. You stop explaining yourself. You stop letting others dictate your worth. And let me tell you, that kind of freedom, it's priceless. So what's the secret? It's not about doing more or being more. It's about shifting how you see yourself. It's about deciding that you are already capable, already valuable, already enough. And it's about living in a way that reflects that decision every single day. I'm not saying it's easy, but I promise you, it's worth it. Because when you show up with that kind of confidence, people can't help but take notice. Let's get started. This is about building something lasting, confidence that no one can take away from you. Are you ready? Let's do this. Let me ask you this. How often do you look outward for validation? Whether it's approval from a boss, a compliment from a friend, or recognition from a stranger, we've all done it. I know I have. It feels good in the moment, but that feeling fades quickly, leaving you craving more. That's the trap I fell into for years, thinking my worth depended on what others thought of me. But let me tell you something I've learned. True confidence doesn't come from the outside. It comes from within, built by the way you live, think, and act. Stoicism taught me this lesson in a way that nothing else ever could. Confidence isn't about being perfect or being the loudest in the room. It's about standing firmly in your values, knowing who you are, and refusing to let anything or anyone shake that foundation. When you build your self-worth from the inside out, you stop seeking permission to feel valuable. You simply know that you are. It starts with clarity. Before you can stand tall, you need to know what you stand for. For me, this meant identifying my core values, things like integrity, kindness, and perseverance. I realized that when I acted in alignment with these values, I felt strong, grounded, and secure. On the other hand, when I strayed from them, I felt uneasy and unsure of myself. This is one of the greatest teachings of Stoicism. Your worth is tied to your character, not to how others see you. When you start living by your own principles, confidence follows naturally because you know you're living authentically. But this isn't something that happens overnight. Building inner confidence is a practice, a daily commitment to yourself. One of the most transformative shifts for me was learning to let go of the need to please everyone. I grew up thinking that being liked equaled being valuable. If I could just make everyone happy, then I'd finally feel worthy. But you know what? That approach never works. You can't control what others think of you, and bending over backward to gain their approval only pulls you further away from your true self. Stoicism teaches us to focus on what we can control, our own thoughts, actions, and reactions. When I started applying this, I felt an incredible sense of freedom. I didn't have to exhaust myself trying to be everything to everyone. I could just be me. Another important piece of this puzzle is silencing the inner critic. You know that voice, the one that whispers doubts and magnifies your flaws. For years, I let that voice control me, believing it was telling me the truth. But Stoicism helped me see it for what it is, just noise. When those doubts creep in, I now ask myself questions. Is this thought helpful? Is it based on facts, or is it just fear talking? More often than not, it's fear. By challenging those negative thoughts, I've been able to quiet them and replace them with something more constructive. This isn't about ignoring reality or pretending to be invincible. It's about being kind to yourself and recognizing that those harsh thoughts don't define you. One of the most empowering practices I've embraced is keeping the promises I make to myself. It sounds simple, but it's incredibly powerful. Every time you follow through on a commitment, no matter how small, you're reinforcing your self-trust. For me, it started with little things: waking up on time, sticking to a workout, completing a task I'd been putting off. Each time I honored those promises, I felt my confidence grow. It's not about achieving massive success overnight. It's about proving to yourself day by day that you can be relied upon. Life will test you, this is a given. But how you respond to those tests shapes your confidence. The Stoics believed in seeing challenges as opportunities for growth. They called it loving your fate, embracing everything life throws at you as part of your journey. This mindset has been a game changer for me. When setbacks come, instead of thinking, "Why is this happening to me?" I ask, "What can I learn from this?" Every challenge I've faced has taught me something valuable and made me stronger. This doesn't mean the struggles magically disappear, but it does mean you stop seeing them as roadblocks and start seeing them as stepping stones. Another key to building unshakable confidence is understanding that it doesn't need to be loud. True confidence is quiet, steady, and grounded. It doesn't need to boast or seek attention because it speaks for itself. I've seen people with this kind of presence, walking into a room without saying a word, yet commanding respect, simply because they carry themselves with assurance. That's the kind of confidence Stoicism helps you cultivate. It's not about convincing others you're the best. It's about knowing it within yourself and letting your actions reflect it. Comparison can be one of the biggest threats to your self-worth. I used to fall into this trap all the time, looking at others and feeling like I was falling short. But Stoicism reminds us that every person's journey is unique. You can't measure yourself against someone else's progress because you're not walking the same path. When I stopped comparing myself to others, I started focusing on my own growth. I began to celebrate my small wins and appreciate how far I'd come. It's freeing to let go of the need to keep up with others and instead focus on becoming the best version of yourself. Gratitude has also played a huge role in building my confidence. When you take time to appreciate what you already have, your strengths, your efforts, your journey, you start to see yourself in a more positive light. Gratitude shifts your focus from what's lacking to what's abundant, and that change in perspective is incredibly empowering. Instead of dwelling on my shortcomings, I started acknowledging my progress, no matter how small. Surrounding yourself with the right people is just as important. The Stoics emphasized the value of community, but also stressed the importance of choosing your circle wisely. The people you spend time with can either lift you up or pull you down. I've made it a point to surround myself with those who challenge me, inspire me, and respect me. Their energy fuels my confidence, just as mine fuels theirs. Confidence isn't a destination, it's a practice. It's built through the choices you make, the thoughts you entertain, and the actions you take every single day. When you commit to building it from within, you create a foundation so strong that nothing can shake it. You stop seeking validation because you know your worth, and that kind of inner strength is unbreakable. Let's build on something critical from earlier. Confidence grows when you align with your values, but staying aligned isn't always easy. Life doesn't give you a smooth path. It throws challenges, people, and emotions in your way. Here's the truth. How you handle those moments defines whether you stay grounded or let the chaos pull you off course. This is where your mind becomes your greatest ally or your worst enemy. Controlling your thoughts and emotions isn't about suppressing them, it's about mastering them, and that's a skill that transforms every area of your life. I've struggled with this myself. There have been times when anger, fear, or frustration got the better of me. A rude comment, a setback, or a moment of uncertainty could send my mind spiraling. But Stoicism taught me something profound. While you can't control what happens to you, you can control how you respond. That realization shifted everything for me. When you take control of your thoughts and emotions, you take control of your life. It starts with awareness. Most of us go through life reacting automatically, barely pausing to think before we speak or act. I used to do this all the time, letting my emotions dictate my responses. But here's what I learned. If you don't take charge of your mind, it will take charge of you. One of the first things I started practicing was the art of pausing. When something triggered me, instead of reacting instantly, I'd stop, take a breath, and ask myself, what's the right way to handle this? That pause, those few seconds, can change everything. It gives you the space to choose your response instead of letting your emotions choose for you. Stoicism teaches us that emotions are not inherently bad. They're signals, information your mind and body are giving you, but it's up to you to interpret that information wisely. For example, anger might tell you that a boundary has been crossed. Fear might signal a challenge ahead. Instead of being consumed by these emotions, I've learned to see them as opportunities for growth. When I feel anger bubbling up, I ask myself, what boundary was crossed, and how can I address it constructively? When fear creeps in, I remind myself that it's a chance to face something I've been avoiding. Mastering your mind isn't about eliminating emotions. It's about understanding and guiding them. Another powerful Stoic principle is separating what's in your control from what isn't. This simple yet profound mindset has saved me countless hours of stress. There was a time when I'd let external events, things I had no power over, consume me. Maybe it was someone else's behavior, an unexpected change, or even a delay in my plans. But once I started focusing solely on what I could control, my thoughts, actions, and perspective, I felt a sense of freedom I'd never experienced before. Instead of wasting energy on things outside my reach, I poured it into what I could influence, and the results were transformative. Your thoughts are the foundation of your emotions. Negative thought patterns can spiral into anxiety, self-doubt, or frustration, while positive, constructive thoughts can empower you. I've made it a habit to challenge negative thinking as soon as it arises. Let's say I catch myself thinking, "I'm not good enough to handle this." Instead of letting that thought linger, I counter it with evidence from my past, moments where I've faced similar challenges and succeeded. This isn't about false positivity. It's about being realistic and reminding yourself of your own resilience. Every time you counter a negative thought, you're rewiring your brain to think differently. One of the most practical tools I've learned from Stoicism is visualization. Before facing a situation that might trigger me, I take a few moments to mentally walk through it. For example, if I know I'm heading into a difficult conversation, I visualize myself staying calm, choosing my words carefully, and handling the situation with grace. This isn't about predicting the future. It's about preparing your mind to respond the way you want to. When you visualize success, you're training your brain to align with that outcome. Breathing is another underestimated but powerful tool for emotional control. When emotions run high, your breath often reflects it, short, shallow, and rapid. By consciously slowing down your breathing, you signal to your body that it's safe to relax. I've used this technique in moments of stress, whether it's before speaking in front of a group or during a heated discussion. A few deep, slow breaths can bring you back to a place of clarity and control. Another key aspect of mastering your mind is reframing how you see challenges. Instead of viewing obstacles as problems, I've started seeing them as opportunities to grow stronger. This shift in perspective is rooted in Stoic philosophy. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That means every difficulty you face has the potential to make you better, but only if you approach it with the right mindset. I've learned to ask myself, what can I learn from this? How can this make me stronger? This simple practice turns frustration into fuel. Journaling has also been a game changer for me. At the end of each day, I take a few minutes to reflect on moments where I struggled to control my emotions or thoughts. Writing it down helps me understand what triggered me, why I reacted the way I did, and how I can handle similar situations better in the future. It's not about beating yourself up. It's about learning and growing. Over time, this practice has made me more self-aware and better equipped to handle challenges with composure. Stoicism also emphasizes the importance of perspective. When something feels overwhelming, I remind myself to zoom out. Will this issue matter a week from now, a month, a year? Most of the time, the answer is no. This simple shift helps me put things in perspective and not let temporary emotions take control. It's like stepping back from a painting. You see the bigger picture instead of getting caught up in one tiny detail. Mastering your mind requires consistency. It's not a one-time effort, it's a daily practice. There are days when I slip up, when my emotions get the better of me, or when I let negative thoughts linger longer than they should. But every time I catch myself and course correct, I'm building a stronger foundation. It's like training a muscle. The more you practice, the stronger it gets. Controlling your thoughts and emotions doesn't mean you'll never feel overwhelmed or unsure. It means you'll have the tools to navigate those moments with clarity and purpose. Life will always throw challenges your way, but when you've mastered your mind, those challenges lose their power to control you. Instead, you take the reins and steer your life in the direction you choose. That's the kind of freedom Stoicism offers, and it's a skill worth cultivating every single day. Controlling your thoughts and emotions is like clearing the fog from your path. But where do you go once the path is clear? It's one thing to master your reactions, but the real question is, what kind of person are you striving to become? That's the next step, leading yourself with purpose, discipline, and integrity. For me, this journey took on a whole new meaning when I started learning from one of the greatest Stoics of all time, Marcus Aurelius. He wasn't just a philosopher, he was an emperor who lived his teachings every single day. His life offers us a blueprint for how to lead ourselves, not for glory or recognition, but because it's the right thing to do. What struck me most about Marcus Aurelius was his relentless commitment to self-discipline. Here was a man who had immense power, wealth, and influence, yet he didn't use any of it as an excuse to take the easy way out. Instead, he held himself to the highest standards. That made me reflect on my own life. How often do we justify cutting corners or letting things slide because no one else is watching? But Marcus reminds us that the person who always sees us is ourselves. I started to realize that self-leadership isn't about public victories, it's about private discipline. It's waking up early to stick to your goals, even when you'd rather sleep in. It's following through on your commitments, even when they've lost their initial excitement. The small, unseen acts of discipline build a foundation of self-respect that no one can take away. Another lesson I've taken from Marcus is the power of humility. It's easy to think that acting like the best means puffing yourself up, but Marcus showed the opposite. Despite being one of the most powerful men of his time, he constantly reminded himself of his mortality and limitations. He wrote in his meditations about the importance of staying grounded and not letting ego take over. This hit me hard because I realized how often ego can sneak into our lives. It might show up as the need to win an argument, the refusal to admit a mistake, or the constant desire to prove yourself. Marcus taught me that real strength comes from humility. When you let go of the need to be right all the time, you open yourself up to learning and growth. Humility isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Leading yourself also means leading by example. Marcus didn't just preach values, he lived them. That's a lesson that stayed with me. I used to think that inspiring others required big speeches or bold actions, but it's the quiet, consistent demonstration of virtues that truly inspires. Whether it's showing kindness to someone who doesn't deserve it or staying calm in a stressful situation, your actions speak louder than anything you could say. When I started focusing on how I showed up in everyday moments, I noticed a shift, not just in how others saw me, but in how I saw myself. It's not about perfection, it's about consistency. One of the most profound teachings from Marcus is the idea of viewing obstacles as opportunities. He famously wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That mindset changed how I approach challenges. Instead of seeing them as roadblocks, I started asking, what can this teach me? How can I grow from this? Leading yourself means embracing difficulties as part of your path. It's not easy, but it's empowering. When you face a setback, you can either let it define you or let it refine you. Marcus shows us the choice is always ours. Another critical aspect of self-leadership is staying aligned with your values, even when it's inconvenient. Marcus wrote extensively about the importance of virtue, living with courage, justice, temperance, and wisdom. These aren't just lofty ideals, they're practical tools for navigating life. For me, this meant asking myself tough questions. Am I being fair in my interactions? Am I staying disciplined in my habits? Am I making decisions based on wisdom rather than impulse? Every time I fall short, and I do, I see it as a chance to recalibrate, not to punish myself, but to grow stronger. I've also learned from Marcus the importance of perspective. In his writings, he often reminded himself of the vastness of the universe and the brevity of life. At first, this might seem discouraging, but it's actually liberating. When you realize how small your problems are in the grand scheme of things, they lose their power to overwhelm you. This perspective has helped me stay calm in situations where I once would have panicked. It's not about dismissing your struggles, but about putting them in their proper place. When you lead yourself with this kind of clarity, you're less likely to be swayed by temporary emotions or external pressures. Marcus also emphasized the importance of service. He saw his role as emperor not as a privilege, but as a responsibility. That mindset shifted how I view my own roles in life, whether as a friend, a colleague, or a family member. Leading yourself means asking, how can I contribute? How can I add value to the lives of those around me? This doesn't mean neglecting your own needs. It means recognizing that true fulfillment often comes from helping others. When you lead with a spirit of service, you inspire those around you to do the same. One of the most practical takeaways from Marcus's teachings is the idea of preparing your mind daily. He would often write reminders to himself about staying focused, calm, and virtuous, knowing that the day ahead would bring challenges. I've adopted a similar practice, taking a few minutes each morning to center myself and set intentions for how I want to show up. This small habit has had a big impact on how I handle the day. It's a reminder that leading yourself isn't just about big decisions. It's about how you approach each moment. Marcus teaches us the value of reflection. At the end of each day, he would review his actions and ask himself whether he lived up to his principles. This isn't about guilt or regret. It's about learning and growing. I've started doing this too, and it's been incredibly humbling and motivating. Reflection allows you to celebrate your progress and identify areas for improvement without judgment. It's a way to stay accountable to yourself and keep moving forward. Leading yourself like a Stoic emperor isn't about being perfect or seeking recognition. It's about holding yourself to a standard that reflects your values and striving to live with discipline, humility, and purpose. Marcus Aurelius showed us that even in the highest positions of power, the greatest victories are the ones we win within ourselves. When you commit to leading yourself in this way, you not only transform your own life, but also inspire those around you to do the same. That's the kind of leadership the world needs, and it starts with you. Leading yourself with discipline and humility builds a solid foundation, but what happens when doubt creeps in? It's easy to feel strong when everything is going well, but what about those moments when you start questioning your abilities, when your weaknesses feel too heavy to carry? I've been there, feeling like I wasn't enough, like my flaws were barriers instead of stepping stones. But here's the truth I've learned. Doubt and imperfection aren't signs of failure. They're opportunities for growth. The Stoics didn't see weakness as something to fear or hide. They saw it as the raw material for strength. The first step in conquering self-doubt is acknowledgement. For years, I tried to avoid my weaknesses, pretending they didn't exist. I thought that if I ignored them, they'd disappear. But the more I ran from them, the more power they had over me. Stoicism taught me that facing your flaws head-on is the only way to overcome them. It's not about dwelling on them or beating yourself up. It's about looking at them honestly and asking, what can I learn from this? When you acknowledge your imperfections, you take away their ability to control you. They're no longer something to be feared. They're challenges to be met. Self-doubt often grows in the shadows of comparison. I've caught myself looking at others and thinking, they've got it all figured out. Why can't I? But the Stoics remind us that each person's path is unique. Comparing your weaknesses to someone else's strengths is like comparing apples to oranges. It's unfair and unproductive. Instead, I've learned to focus on my own progress. Every step forward, no matter how small, is proof that I'm growing. By keeping my attention on my own journey, I've been able to quiet the voice of doubt and replace it with a steady sense of self-trust. One of the most powerful tools I've discovered is reframing weaknesses as opportunities. The Stoics believed that adversity builds character, and I've seen this play out in my own life. A few years ago, I struggled with public speaking. Every time I had to stand in front of a group, my heart would race and doubt would take over. Instead of letting that fear paralyze me, I decided to lean into it. I started small, speaking up in meetings, practicing in front of friends, and over time, the thing that once felt like a weakness became a source of confidence. The process wasn't easy, but it taught me that the very things we're most afraid of often hold the key to our greatest growth. Embracing vulnerability is another lesson I've taken from Stoicism. In the past, I thought showing vulnerability was a sign of weakness. I thought I had to hide my struggles to appear strong, but the more I tried to mask my imperfections, the more isolated I felt. The Stoics, however, teach us that vulnerability isn't about exposing yourself recklessly. It's about being honest with yourself and others. When I started admitting my challenges, not as excuses, but as truths, I found strength in the connection it created. People respond to authenticity. It's not about pretending to have all the answers. It's about being real. Doubt often comes from a fear of failure. I've been guilty of holding back because I was afraid of making mistakes. But here's what I've learned. Failure isn't the opposite of success. It's part of the process. The Stoics saw failure as a teacher. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This perspective shifted how I see setbacks. Instead of seeing them as signs that I wasn't good enough, I started seeing them as opportunities to improve. Every failure contains a lesson, and every lesson makes you stronger. Building resilience is essential for turning doubt into strength. Resilience doesn't mean never feeling uncertain. It means bouncing back from those feelings with determination. For me, this has meant developing habits that reinforce my sense of self-worth. Journaling has been particularly helpful. At the end of each day, I write down one thing I did well, one thing I could improve, and what I learned. This simple practice helps me see my progress and keeps me focused on growth instead of perfection. Stoicism also emphasizes the importance of action. Doubt thrives in inactivity. The more you hesitate, the more your mind fills with questions like, "What if I fail?" or "What if I'm not ready?" I've found that the best way to combat this is to take action, even if it's small. The act of doing, of moving forward, breaks the cycle of doubt. It's not about being fearless. It's about taking the first step despite your fear. Each action builds momentum, and with momentum comes confidence. Another powerful lesson is the idea of focusing on effort rather than outcome. In the past, I'd tie my sense of self-worth to results. If I succeeded, I felt good about myself. If I failed, I felt like a failure. But Stoicism teaches us to focus on what's within our control, our effort, our attitude, our commitment. When I started measuring success by the effort I put in rather than the outcome, I felt a sense of freedom. I could take pride in trying my best, regardless of the result. This shift has helped me approach challenges with courage rather than fear. The support of others can also play a role in overcoming self-doubt. While Stoicism emphasizes self-reliance, it also recognizes the value of community. I've learned that surrounding myself with people who encourage and challenge me has been instrumental in my growth. These aren't people who flatter me or tell me what I want to hear. They're people who believe in my potential and hold me accountable. Their support reminds me that I'm not alone in my struggles and that growth is a shared journey. Conquering self-doubt is a daily practice. It's not something you overcome once and never face again. There are still moments when doubt creeps in, but now I have the tools to handle it. I acknowledge it, reframe it, and use it as fuel to move forward. Each time I do, I'm reminded that my weaknesses don't define me. They refine me. The process isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. Turning vulnerability into strength isn't just about becoming more confident. It's about becoming more yourself. Turning doubt into strength taught me that embracing imperfections is the foundation for resilience. But there's a deeper layer to building an unshakable sense of freedom. It's about recognizing where your power truly lies and letting go of everything outside it. This is one of the most liberating lessons I've ever learned, and it changed how I approach every challenge. The Stoics called it focusing on what you can control, and once you understand and apply this, you stop wasting energy on things you can't change. That energy, redirected inward, becomes the fuel for your growth, peace, and personal greatness. I used to spend so much time and energy trying to control outcomes, situations, and even people. If someone criticized me, I'd replay their words over and over, trying to figure out how I could have changed their perception. If plans went wrong, I'd agonize over what I could have done differently. But no amount of overthinking or worry ever changed the outcome. All it did was drain me and leave me stuck in a cycle of frustration. It wasn't until I started practicing this Stoic principle that I began to reclaim my peace. The key is learning to separate what's within your control from what isn't. For me, this started with a simple question: is this something I can influence? If the answer was no, I'd remind myself to let it go. At first, this felt impossible. Letting go isn't easy, especially when you care deeply about something. But the truth is, holding on to things you can't control only hurts you. The Stoics taught that our power lies in how we choose to respond, not in controlling external events. This shift in mindset is where true freedom begins. One of the most practical ways I've applied this principle is by focusing on my actions. For example, if I'm working on a project and I'm worried about how it will be received, I shift my energy to doing my best work instead of fixating on the outcome. I remind myself that I can control my effort, my attention to detail, and my dedication, but not how others will react. This approach has not only reduced my stress, but also helped me produce better results because my focus is where it matters most. Focusing on what you can control also means letting go of the need to please everyone. This was a big challenge for me. I used to think that if I could just say the right things or act a certain way, I could win everyone over. But no matter how hard I tried, there were always people who disagreed with me or misunderstood me. Once I realized that their opinions were outside my control, I felt a sense of relief. Instead of chasing approval, I started focusing on being authentic and aligned with my values. That shift gave me a sense of inner freedom I hadn't experienced before. This principle doesn't just apply to relationships or work. It's also a powerful tool for dealing with setbacks. Life is full of unexpected challenges, and no matter how well you plan, things won't always go your way. I've faced situations where everything seemed to fall apart, projects that failed, plans that unraveled, people who let me down. In those moments, it's easy to spiral into frustration and despair. But the Stoics taught me to focus on my response instead of the situation itself. When I started asking myself, what's the next best step I can take? Instead of, why did this happen to me? I found a way forward. That simple shift in focus turned what felt like insurmountable obstacles into opportunities for growth. Another lesson I've learned is the importance of setting boundaries, not just with others, but with my own mind. When you're focused on things you can't control, it's easy to let your thoughts spiral into negativity. I've caught myself doing this countless times, especially when faced with uncertainty. But I've learned to set mental boundaries by redirecting my thoughts to what's actionable. For example, if I'm worrying about something out of my hands, I'll consciously shift my focus to tasks I can accomplish or ways I can improve myself. It's not about ignoring problems. It's about choosing where to invest your energy. This principle has also taught me to embrace the present moment. When you're constantly worrying about the future or dwelling on the past, you lose sight of what's happening right now. I've been guilty of this, spending hours replaying mistakes or imagining worst-case scenarios. But the Stoics remind us that the present is the only time we truly have control over. By focusing on what I can do right now, I've been able to live with more clarity and purpose. Letting go of what's outside your control doesn't mean you stop caring. This was a misconception I struggled with at first. I thought detachment meant apathy, but it's the opposite. It's about caring deeply where it counts, on your effort, your character, and your actions, without letting external factors dictate your peace of mind. This has allowed me to show up fully in situations without being weighed down by unnecessary stress. It's a mindset of engagement, not detachment. Another powerful realization is that by focusing on what's within your control, you build resilience. When you stop wasting energy on things you can't change, you have more capacity to handle challenges effectively. I've seen this in my own life. When I stopped fixating on external outcomes, I had more energy to focus on problem solving, learning, and growing. Resilience isn't about never feeling discouraged. It's about having the strength to keep moving forward, no matter what happens. This mindset also fosters self-trust. When you consistently focus on your own actions and responses, you start to see how much power you actually have. I've found that this builds a quiet confidence, a sense of knowing that no matter what life throws at me, I have the tools to navigate it. That's the kind of freedom the Stoics talked about, not freedom from challenges, but freedom from being controlled by them. Focusing on what you can control has been a transformative practice for me. It's taught me to let go of unnecessary stress, to act with purpose, and to find peace in the midst of uncertainty. It's not always easy. There are still moments when I catch myself worrying about things outside my influence. But each time I bring my focus back to what I can control, I feel more grounded and empowered. This is the kind of freedom that lasts, and it's available to anyone willing to take that first step inward. Before we wrap up, let's take a moment to reflect on everything we've explored together. Acting like you're the best and embodying true greatness isn't about arrogance or pretending to be perfect. It's about building unshakable inner confidence, mastering your emotions, leading yourself with integrity, turning weaknesses into strengths, and focusing on what you can control. It's about showing up every day as the best version of yourself. Not because someone else is watching, but because you know you're worth the effort. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca didn't leave us lessons for fame or glory. They left us a roadmap for living with purpose, courage, and clarity. When you embrace these Stoic principles, you stop chasing approval and you start leading your own life. You become the kind of person who commands respect without demanding it, who faces challenges with resilience, and who lives with a sense of freedom that no one can take away. Now, I want to hear from you. Which of these lessons resonated with you the most? What's one step you're going to take today to embody the best version of yourself? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every one of them, and I love seeing how these ideas spark change in your life. If you found value in what we talked about today, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss another lesson that helps you take control of your mind, your life, and your destiny. Together, we're building something powerful, a community of people who aren't afraid to rise above and live authentically. Thank you for being here and for taking this journey with me. Now, go out there and act like the best. Because you are.